All right, welcome to React. My name is Brandon, and I'm going to be teaching you some of the React framework created by formerly Facebook, now Meta. Should be pretty good. We'll be learning about components. We'll be learning about how generative JavaScript works, using JavaScript to actually create HTML, and kind of go from there. So, should be pretty cool. We're going to go ahead and get started. I just need to make sure that my versions are all okay here. This should be fine. This should be all good. All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up a terminal, CD into a folder for your project, and we're going to actually write create React app, and we're going to call this to-dos. And that should create React app to-dos. npx create React app to-dos. See if that worked. Cool. So to do this, we're just going to wait a second. Create React app is just a shortcut, shorthand, quick little thing. Also, if this did not work for you, if npx is not a recognized command on your computer, you need to install Node. Give me a second. So the way you would do that would be you go to nodejs.org, and then you just select the recommended for most users project there. That should be just fine. We should be back here. Still taking a little bit, so I'm going to pause again. See you in a minute. All right, so if this worked out successfully, you should end up seeing happy hacking there at the end. We're going to CD into it, and then we're going to do code. And again, this is just how I open up my VS Code. If you want to open up your VS Code by clicking on it and then selecting what you need to, opening the project folder, that should be fine. But we're going to go ahead and hang out here. Wait for this to wake up. We're going to explore a bit once this is here. Cool. We've got a lot of stuff that we're going to end up deleting here in just a moment. But what I wanted to kind of do first was sort of walk through what on earth just happened. And actually, we are told by our terminal, which we just saw on the previous screen, that we have some commands that we can run to make the app kind of go. And one of the best ways to figure out what all those commands are, you can even write your own if you want it to behave differently once you know what you're doing. But we have these, I think it's just the scripts here. But we have these scripts, and each one of these scripts will do something, right? And we're not going to be too concerned with these two, but we are going to end up using npm run start, and then if we were to put our code onto the cloud, we would build. We're going to do that on our next React project. But for this one, we're not going to end up building. We're just going to be using the start function. And so what we can do, Brandon, how do I run the application, right? How do I start the app? Well, so what we would do is npm run start, and that should be the right command here. And sure enough, it says React script start, so that means that line right there is where this same line occurred. We just used kind of a shorthand version of that so that it would kind of automate that. It is opening up on my other page, so I'm going to drag this over. And you should wake up, and we should see a nice little React app in a moment. Let's see what our app is doing. It's still thinking. Starting the development server. There you go. You can now view to-dos in the browser. So locally, we have this right here. So localhost 3000 on your network. So if you have another computer on the same internet, they could access it that way. Note that the development build is not optimized, which is fine. But here we go. So now we have a nice little React app. We've got this cool icon that's just kind of moving around. And now we have this. So we can go to source, app.js, and save to reload. So that's pretty nice. One of the things that's going on with my computer is it's running a little bit slow in general. You saw how long it took to get that going. It also took quite some time to get my stuff installed. So I'm not going to be running this actively. You don't have to quit it. The way that you do quit the server from running is Control C, and that will stop it. And so now if I refresh this page, it won't work. And so you'll see me kind of going back and forth a lot because especially while I'm recording, I've got the recording software that takes up a ton of RAM, which is kind of obnoxious. And if you have better alternatives for me, please feel free to reach out and let me know. But the recording software takes a ton of my computer's energy. And so it's hard to run a server or two or three while I'm trying to teach. And so I kind of go back and forth with that. Because otherwise, as I change the code, it will automatically update. This will actually restart the server if I start typing things, and that takes a lot of brain power for it to just kind of reread all the code every time and keep going. So that being said, let's have a look at what's actually in our project folder. So we've got this README, which is pretty straightforward. It kind of tells you what the different scripts are and how to use them. This is automatically made by Create React App. Actually, this whole thing is. And so from here, we're going to have to kind of rearrange. But yeah, you can see it was bootstrapped with Create React App. That's fine. This is all in Markdown. You can read that later if you want to. And if you add this to your GitHub, if you commit this, that README will end up being kind of the first thing that you see. So if you don't want that to be what you see when you put this on GitHub, that's how you change this here. Next, we have this package.json. We've already seen this a little bit, but we've got a variety of dependencies, right? So these are things that are not things that we need to put on the internet. So when we publish our code to the actual internet, there's things that we have that help us develop and help us see things. But again, the internet, so your browser can't read React, right? You go, well, then why are we using React to create websites? Websites run in the browser. What is the deal here? Well, so React is a framework basically meant to help developers. That's the real idea here. And then we're going to be using the JavaScript part of React to actually generate HTML and CSS that has JavaScript that interacts with it. And when we do that npm run build, and it ends up actually building the app, then it's going to take our React application and kind of disseminate it into just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. And that's really useful. That's really cool. That also makes things run a lot faster, etc. Because then it's not trying to figure out how React works. It's only just like HTML, CSS, which are both very fast, and then JavaScript. And so we've got some of these dependencies that we're not going to end up wanting to put out on the internet later. And so, anyways, we got a linter. So this is going to be checking our syntax, making sure that we write valid React code. Browsers list and development. I've never even messed with those, so I wouldn't even be too concerned about it. You got your name, your version. You can change these as you like update the app if you wanted to, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then here we've got React 18, React DOM 18. We're gonna see how those work because I originally wrote this code in React 17, and React 18 is a smidgen different. We're gonna talk about some of those differences. And the next React app that we make is going to be in React 17. But anyways, yeah, so that's pretty cool. So we're going to go now. The git ignore is pretty obvious. That's just going to say don't put these things on git. And then, so we've got these files here. So node modules, it's grayed out because the git ignore has us ignoring node modules. Those are where our actual like helper tools live, right? So for example, these are all the things. So like Babel, for example, that's a tool that takes, so we're going to be writing this in the newest version of JavaScript. So ES6, the newish big version. We're writing in ES6. But imagine that your grandmother has not updated her browser in a long time. And so her computer only reads JavaScript ES4, right? Which would be insane, but pretend. So what Babel does is it says, hey, you've written this in this new version of JavaScript. I'm going to boil this down to an older version so that it works on more browsers. And so that's basically what that one is. There's a lot of tools in here. TypeScript ESLint. So that's like I said, there's the lint. We'll go through and make sure your syntax is right. So that's going to do that for your TypeScript. And obviously we don't need all of these. Some of these there's a lot, right? And they're all just kind of helper tools. And when we do the npm run build at the end, what it'll end up doing is it'll say, oh, I'm only going to choose the pieces of these tools that I need to run and translate that into regular JavaScript so that then the app will work the way we expect it to. So that's what the node modules are. So now all we've got is this public folder and this source folder. The source folder is where all of our app logic lives, right? So all of the, how does our app actually work? And public is, I'm not entirely sure why it's called public, but what's going on here, so this is kind of just like static stuff that we're using. So our React logo, which I believe is being used in our, there we go. There's a little PNG file with the React logo, etc. The most important thing inside of the public folder, though, is the index.html. And this is where we're going to start actually understanding how React really works under the hood. So this entire video is just understanding what just happened, and then from there, once we understand what happened, we're going to start kind of changing things and understanding what we can do to make our own. So kind of just boilerplate, blah, blah, blah stuff. We'll probably get rid of some of these other things. A lot of this stuff needs to go. What we're paying attention to, so you'll notice that the actual body of the application does not look very ornate. And at the same time, when we ran it, you'll recall that it looked a whole lot better than what this looks like, right? This doesn't look like something that just has one div in the middle of it, right? This looks a lot more ornate. There's obviously multiple things going on. Where on earth is, like, learn React, for example, where does that line live? It's not here. Well, so you might recall from JavaScript that you can use JavaScript to insert things like HTML into your elements, or you can say get element by ID, or those kinds of things. And React is completely built off of this concept. So right now we've got this div, and its ID is root. Root kind of depends on what your regional diction is. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to app.js, I believe. It's either this or index. And I guess it's index.js today. Cool. This is the line right here where we're actually going to get that same div from index.html. And we're going to end up rendering everything else into that piece of HTML. So again, const root equals React dom.createRoot, and this is the React 18 syntax. React 17 is a smidgen different, but React dom.createRoot, and then we're going to take document.getElement by ID, which again is just plain old JavaScript. It's really straightforward. We all know what this line means. We're going to get that, save that to root, and then we're going to render all this other stuff into that root ID, right? So I could even put something like h1 below React like this. That should be just fine. It might be mad, we'll see. I don't know if this is JSX or not. Okay, so now we should be able to go over here, and somewhere on this page, there we go. So we've got an h1 tag with hello React put at the top, okay? But this still isn't in our HTML, right? We are injecting HTML into that one div right there. And that's kind of the whole concept of all of React. And so everything else on this, in these folders, in these files, is built around this concept. And we're going to be learning, React has its own language, not its own, other people use it, but I think Facebook Meta ended up inventing JSX. And JSX is kind of a hybrid of JavaScript and HTML. And so that's some of how this is working as well. And so we'll see like our app.js here. Class name is app. We're not even concerned what that is yet, but we've got an image, and this is where our actual that React picture comes from. We've imported logo from logo to SVG, so we're actually taking this entire file and saving it to a JavaScript variable, and then using that as our source right there. And then edit source app.js and save to reload. So then you can see here that we're writing, that's where our actual edit line that we saw over here, that's where this actually lives. right? Then we've got an A tag for Learn React, and then it's just a link to their documentation. And then that's pretty much the idea. And we're importing the CSS, and so that's going to be all the styling. And again, this looks kind of like HTML, but also kind of like JavaScript, and also not quite like HTML, and also not quite like JavaScript. And that's because this is JSX. So if you're reading this and setting off some alarm bells in your brain, you're going, this is not normal. You're right, it's not normal. This is something completely new to us. It just looks like things that we know. And the nice part is the learning curve isn't that steep because we already understand JavaScript and we already understand HTML. We just have to figure out kind of where those boundaries are and how that plays out for React specifically. So that's what we're going to be focusing on pretty hard for the rest of this course, and understanding some of the basics of what components are and how they interact with each other, and where we go from there. So let's go ahead and kind of just clean up this whole application. And I'm going to actually close this out now as well because it's going to be real mad for a long time until we finish deleting stuff. So I'm going to delete all these images. Yes. Actually, let's just go ahead. I'm going to command click a bunch of these. I don't need any of those. Can delete all that. All I need is the index.html. And then over here, I guess we can leave app.css. That's fine. I'm going to get rid of this test file and the logo and the web vitals and the setup tests. We're not going to be doing any testing today. That'll be something that we'll probably teach down the road. And I don't remember if index.css. Okay, we're going to keep that too, I bet. Yep. And we don't need these things though. We are going to just delete all of this content. We'll end up keeping the app.css and importing that eventually. Because we do want, yeah, so here's where our index lives, and that's fine. I believe we can keep the font family, and we don't need this either. We're not going to end up using that long term. And so, but when you create a new HTML file or a new CSS, like the HTML automatically adds a small border everywhere, which you probably know. And so just leaving that margin at 0, and they're keeping the font family. And this is other font stuff that I don't really care about. So we're just going to leave that in there. Because it's not going to be a huge deal. So we've got the index.css, we've got the app imported. We can get rid of this. We're not using that. And we obviously deleted that file earlier. And that means we can't use that. So we're going to get rid of that too. We want React, we want React DOM and app. So that's all fine. And I believe it's pretty much what we wanted. Oh, I got rid of the app.js too. So we need to create a new file. Do that. I want to let you know too, before we get going too far in here, I am a big fan of React code snippets. So just do this. I think this is what I have. ES7 plus React code snippets is, I believe, what it's called. Extensions for React, React Native and Redux, and JavaScript, and TypeScript with ES7 syntax. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And so what I end up using mostly here, I don't know why that's, let's see what our snippets are. If you have that installed, you're able to use shorthand stuff to kind of generate React new, and that's really useful. So I use React functional component. Here's RFC. Nope, don't need those. There we go. So this is basically what we get out of this. We say import React from React and import default function, whatever. And it will actually automatically name itself the name of your file. So we've named this file app.js, and so I should be able to do RFC. And we should see a drop down here in a second. There we go. So React functional component. And we've got a variety of different ones. We're just going to leave it with this and do that. And what you'll notice first of all is that we're actually creating a JavaScript function. And this is kind of the main concept behind components. And sort of the way that we sort of divvy up our React applications is it's a whole series of functions. And when we want a function to generate some HTML for us, we call that function. And so in this case, you can see that I'm actually returning a div, and that's pretty neat. And so it obviously already automatically named it app. It's exporting it, because again, we're going to think about this as modules, but it's going to export that function called app, which is going to return a div that says app. And then if we go to our index.js right here, this app, it should be telling us app. So if I were to run this, we're probably going to see errors. I don't know what all I deleted here that it's going to be grouchy about. So right now it's checking to make sure everything's happy, and we'll see if this worked. It should say hello React, and it should say app underneath it if this all is correct. And so far it hasn't screamed at me, so there we go. So it worked, right? And so we have hello React and we have app. One other thing that I think you should probably consider installing is there is a Chrome DevTools for components. And so you can see here that I've got my app right there, and the top level, the hello React thing is not part of a component. It's part of the actual index thing that is part of the create root and stuff. So we're actually gonna go back and delete that. But you can see here that we have this app, and this is really nice because it's kind of like using the Chrome DevTools with your elements, but it's going to talk about our components, and we're going to talk about some of these other things, state in particular and props, both of those. It's really nice to know what your props and your state are for each component as you're kind of messing with them. So that being said, we have a very close to blank application now. We'll go back to index.js and get rid of the h1 tag there because we're not going to be using that. And this is basically our core app file at this point, or index file. I guess you make sure that I did not change that anymore in the future, but I believe that's pretty much where we left at. Computer's got to think for a second. Yep, that's pretty much all I needed. So, cool. And I will see you in the next video for starting to write our own React app. So hopefully this has been helpful, and we've got a nice blank application. We can move on from here. Keep learning. See you there.